Good morning. My name is Kelsiann and I'm from the Central Iowa 4-H Club in Marshall County. Last summer, I was able to go on the experience of a lifetime to South Africa with People to People International. Named the Rainbow Nation by Desmond Tutu, South Africa has 11 official languages, English being the first official one. $1 equals 7 rands in South Africa, so I was carrying around a lot of money while I was there. Also in South Africa, they don't have seasons. They only have a dry and a wet season. So while I was there in summer, it would be their winter time, but they call it the dry season. Today, I'm going to tell you how I was able to go on this experience, the itinerary of what I did, and what I learned. You're probably wondering how I was able to go on such an exciting journey. First, I applied online to People International's website. My freshman year in high school, I was able to go to Australia with People to People, so I automatically got a membership with People International. After I applied online, they narrowed down the people selected, and I was able to have a phone interview. They asked me questions about if I was a good leader in my community, why I wanted to go on the experience, and what I've done in my school. Once I was selected, we had numerous monthly assignments to get to know South Africa. We learned about some important people from South Africa, like Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela, and about South Africa's landscape. We also had conference calls to get to know the people we would be traveling with, because I was traveling with different students from across the country. There were students from Washington, New York, Pennsylvania, everywhere around the country. The first day of my journey, I traveled from Des Moines to Washington, D.C. by myself. That was scary because I'd never traveled by myself before, but it was a great learning experience. I traveled from Des Moines to Georgia and from Georgia to Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C., I met up with the group I would be traveling with. From Washington, D.C., I traveled to Cape Town, South Africa, and it was an 18-hour flight, but we made a pit stop in Dakar, Africa to get more fuel. When we first arrived at the airport, I came in front of this sign because if you see right behind my head, there is a picture of Nelson Mandela, who was the president of South Africa. The third day, well, my first day in South Africa, we went on a township tour. For those of you that don't know what a township is, it's a place where a lot of refugees come to live, and they kind of make their own homes with whatever they have. And some of the townships are government funded, but some of them aren't because they're on private property, so the government can't fund them. So this is a picture of what a typical township house looks like. On the township tour, we also got to go visit a church, which was really inspiring because I got to see how much faith the people actually had, even though they had so little in their actual houses and in their lives. And on the tour, we rode bicycles around the township, and each of us had a bicycle buddy that we rode with because on the back of each of the bikes there was a little seat for the kids in the township to sit on. So this was my bicycle buddy, and although we didn't speak the same language, we got to know each other really well just by our expressions and our laughter of each of the places we visited. The same day after the township tour, we visited Table Mountain, and as you can see, it's called Table Mountain because it's a table. And we rode this blue cable car up to the very top of the mountain, which was very scary because I'm scared of heights, and we saw a beautiful landscape view of Cape Town seashore. Day 4, 5, and 6, we spent our time in the same township that we toured in a school. It wasn't an official school, but it was a school for ages 0 to 5 years old. And each of our group got split up into different schools we went to, but I just so happened to be in the same school that we visited. And we got to play with them a lot, and this is a picture of some of the girls playing with baby dolls, and just like we do in the United States, they play with baby dolls there, but unlike us, the moms in the townships carry their babies on their backs with a towel, so the girls would always want us to come up and tie their sweatshirts up with the babies on their backs. And in the school, they do teach them English because their goal is for them to get out of the township into the real world and try to get a job somewhere. But the only way that they usually do get jobs is if they do speak English. So this is a picture of one of my favorite students learning some of the colors. And each day we went to the park with the kids in the school, and this is just a family that wasn't at the school that I met at the park. And everywhere in South Africa we went, people were always so curious about the United States and what we did because they never have any communication with us otherwise. And this is a picture of the girl that was learning the colors I showed you, and she was one of my favorites. Her name was Tatashwa, and each of us had kind of our own little buddy, like the bicycle tour. And so she was mine for the 3 days, and it was such a sad goodbye to leave them because they didn't really understand that we would be leaving them forever because they didn't speak English. And this is the picture of the school that we went to, and our group painted it for them, and you can see in the right-hand corner how it was white, and then we painted it peach color. On day 7, we went to Robben Island, which was where Nelson Mandela was held captive for 27 years, and this was his cell. He was held captive because of terrorist acts, and this was during when whites and blacks were separated. Also on day 7, we got to visit the Indian Ocean, and this is just a beautiful picture, I think, of the mountains and the landscapes of South Africa, because I never knew South Africa was so mountainous until I actually visited it. And here's another picture of South Africa's Indian Ocean. And that night we got to go to a South African original cafe where we learned all the customs of South Africa, and we washed our hands in a bowl and ate a really yummy cuisine, and it was the best vegetable soup I've ever eaten because it had seaweed in it and it was so fresh. On day 8 we went on a safari, which is my favorite thing to do because I love animals so much. And we got really up close to the animals. This was just a cheetah. It was the only animal that was encaged because it was so harmful to us. But then we went out into the actual wildlife area where they weren't encaged, and we saw tons of animals. And this is just a picture of some hippos we saw, and it just amazed me how the animals were in herds, because I'd never seen the wild animals actually in herds before, just in singles in captivity in zoos. So here's some rhinos, and we got so close to the animals you could almost just put your hand out and touch them. And some elephants, and some lions, and they practically posed for us. And of course zebras. You can't have South Africa without zebras. On day 9 we went to the Cape of Good Hope, which is the most southernmost point of South Africa, so you can't go any more south in Africa than this point, which was really awesome because you were in the very southernmost point of Africa, so it's just kind of ironic to be there. And there are penguins in South Africa. They are not in the ice, but they're acclimated to the temperature, so we did get to see some penguins. And that same day we went on a scenic route, which is named one of the top 10 most scenic drives in the world, which was really amazing because, again, you can see the mountains, and just the color of the mountains is amazing. And we were able to go at sunset, which was even more pretty. And someone, as you can see, was painting the sunset, so just kind of a cool thing. On day 10, we had to leave Cape Town to go to Johannesburg, South Africa, and as you can see, there's just a monkey sitting on a car, which you never see anywhere else. Once we arrived in Johannesburg, South Africa, we got to go visit Lesedi Village, which is a cultural center for visitors to learn about South Africa's culture and history. And this is what a typical bride-to-be would look like trying to find a husband. They would wear these back then. And as you can see, it does draw a lot of attention. And that same night, we got to see a cultural dance, and some of us got to participate in it. On day 11, we got to visit another township in South Africa called Soweto, and it's the biggest township in South Africa. It is also a little more poorly funded, but the government does fund this, because you can see the electrical lines. And then it was just so touching to see the little kids so interested in us walking around, and they looked so precious and innocent. That same day, we also got to go to Ikajang Orphanage. It's an orphanage affected by HIV and AIDS, which is a very common disease in South Africa. And all of these kids had either parents die of HIV or AIDS, or else they had HIV or AIDS. So it was just inspiring to have them so open with us about it and able to be curious with us about the United States, and they had no worries about that they had it or that they were affected by it. And they could speak English, so we got to know them even better. We also got to see Nelson Mandela's house where he grew up in, so it was kind of inspiring to see what made him the way he was and what made him inspired to change South Africa. On day 12, we went to another safari, but unlike the last safari, we got to see a giraffe. And as you can see in the back, there are more mountains, and like I said, it's very mountainous in South Africa. The last night in South Africa, we got to go to a carnivore restaurant, and there, on the carnivore restaurant, they have shish kebabs with meat of all kinds. There was zebra, giraffe, crocodile, which I tried and I did not like it at all, and antelope, because they have a lot of antelope in South Africa. And they would just bring the shish kebab up to your table, ask you if you wanted it, and slice you off a big piece. Day 13 and day 14 was completely flying because, like I said, it was another 18-hour flight to get back home. And although we were sad we were leaving, we were very anxious to get back home. So what did I learn from this whole experience? I learned so many things, but some of the top things I learned was be grateful for what you have. After seeing what the kids in South Africa's townships had and looking at what I had, it made me feel so much more grateful for the things I had that they didn't, because they were so grateful for what they did have and they had so little. I learned to appreciate the little things in life, like having a mom and dad, because some of the kids in the AIDS and HIV orphanage didn't have parents, and they just still lived their life just the same. And I learned that I shouldn't underestimate my potential, because I made so many people's lives better while I was in South Africa that I have no idea. And I learned that anything is possible, because never in a million years did I think that I would be traveling to South Africa in my entire life, and I actually did. And I learned that the power of giving is greater than the power of receiving, because I felt so good after I traveled to South Africa and visited the townships and the orphanages, because it gave me a sense of giving instead of receiving, and I just made me feel so good about myself and about giving to the people. So some of the people I will never forget is our bus driver. His name was Franz, and he drove us around South Africa on our journeys. He drove us to the townships, all the places we visited. He was such a nice guy, and he told us so many things. And this is Alicia. She was the leader of the organization that we went with, and she helped us go to our townships and get us all organized when we got there. And these were my roommates that I roomed with, and we became like sisters because we were talking about school problems, boy problems, just anything in general. We only had seen each other that day we traveled. We had never seen each other before. And while I was there, we also got to meet Mary Jean Eisenhower, who is the great-granddaughter of Dwight D. Eisenhower. And she travels all around the world, but she made a special visit to go see us in South Africa because it was an experience program with People to People International. So it was so cool to be able to meet her in person and talk to her about what we learned and what we want to do when we come back. And of course, I'll never forget the girls I met at the orphanage, or my riding buddy, and of course to Tashwa from the school. The top thing I learned was I went to change South Africa, but Africa ended up changing me. So here's some of the things I brought back. I brought back a South Africa shirt. Of course, you have to have that. And then at the market, I got one of these shirts. It was hand woven. And a South Africa jersey, soccer jersey, because soccer is one of the most popular sports in South Africa. I brought a hat back for my dad. Some seashells from the Indian Ocean. A drum, because this is one of the things that is very prominent in their culture and history, and a hand-painted bowl from the market. So are there any questions?
Obviously, you must have
The question was if I felt welcome, and yes, I did. I felt so welcome. I've been to Australia, South Africa, and Costa Rica, and South Africa is the one place that I felt the most welcome because people were so curious about the United States and they were just so open with you and wanted to learn so much about our culture and trading information. The question is about how many people live in the townships. I'd have to guess about maybe 1,000 to a township. There's a ton of townships in one area. It's kind of like there's a rich village, and then a few blocks down there's the township, and then a few blocks down there's another rich village, and then it's just all combined. So there's just numerous townships throughout the cities. It's kind of like a slums, but worse, I think.
In the first school that you were in, we saw the 18 kids. What ages were there?
What ages were in the township school that I visited? The one that I visited was 0 to 5 years old, but some of the other students that I traveled with went to other schools, other townships had, and some of them were like 8 to 12, somewhere in that area.
Other than the barbecue that you had that night, where did you eat? Who provided your food?
Where did we eat and who provided the food? We mostly ate at the place we stayed at, which was kind of a condo area. So the program that I traveled with provided us the food because some of the food there isn't equipped for us to eat. So I had to have a lot of shots before I went there just in case I did have something that wasn't right for me to eat.
And I take it you would go back.
Would I go back? I definitely would go back because I met so many people that I just fell in love with, and the kids there in the township, people that I met were just so extraordinary that I would go back there in a heartbeat. Are there any other questions? Then this concludes my presentation.